Star one. Good afternoon, and welcome to our seminar on the new I-9 form. This is Mike Staebell. We have about 5 minutes before the webinar will actually start, so just relax and we'll wait for the rest of our attendees to join. We'll be starting up right at 1:30. Thank you. Good afternoon. This is Mike Staebell with the Dickinson Law Firm, and thank you for joining us on our webinar on explanation of the new I-9 form coming out from the immigration folks. Just a couple notes about our webinar. We're starting up our screen here real quickly, but in your upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a small window with a orange arrow at the very top, a slider. And if you arrow that towards the center of your screen, it will open up a little box for a chat box. So we're going to use that to deal with questions. And we're going to go through our short presentation here and then save the questions for the end, and we'll read them over here on our end and do our best to answer them, okay? So let's get our screen started up here, and just give us a second. There you go. If you're having any problems, you know, shoot us a chat or send the email that you got for questions to Bonnie, those of you that got that email, but you can put that in the chat room if you're having any questions. So, as you know, on the 22nd of January, this new form took effect. And what that means for all employers in the U.S. is that anyone hired as of the 22nd, Sunday, must utilize this form and may not use the older form, all right? I want to ensure that everyone is aware of the fact that there is no requirement under this rule to go back and replace the existing forms that you may have used. This is strictly for new hires, okay? Now what we have on the screen is the electronic form, or what we would call the USIS, that's our acronym for the immigration agency that handles this. It's called the Fillable form. And I have to tell you, after playing with it now for a week or two, it's an excellent form. It's an excellent form. It is one of two options that you may use when you're completing I-9s for your new hires. They also have a paper form that you cannot fill out electronically. You just print it out and do it by hand. And I'm going to show you the link as we go through to both of those forms, so you can choose either or. But I have to say, again, after playing with this for a while, I would strongly suggest, even if you use the paper form that's completed 100% by hand, that you have this on your screen. Those of you that are going to be working with the employees on the I-9s, you have this on the screen. And I think it'll be self-explanatory when we go through it, why I say so, because it is so helpful and it's just absolutely chock full of information. Before I actually start in on the form, though, let me just tell you a minute about myself. Again, Mike Staebell is my name. I'm the compliance specialist here at the Dickinson firm. I spent 33 years with the U.S. Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division. Now, they're not immigration, but they do review I-9 forms. And during my career, I certainly reviewed my share of I-9 forms. So I do speak from a certain amount of experience, hopefully. And this form is not radically different from the previous versions. There are some changes we'll talk about. It's mainly just the handy aspect of this electronic version. So we're going to spend a few minutes. We're going to go through the form, and then we'll have time for questions, okay? So I'm sure most of you know that the purpose of this form is to show and be able to prove that the employees that you hire are, number one, who they say they are, their identity, and number two, that they are authorized or legal for employment in the U.S. And of course, with a citizen, all citizens pretty much are automatically approved for employment in the U.S. Where it gets more complicated is when you're dealing with people who are not citizens. And there are various categories there, so we will make sure that to go through that. I also want you to ensure one other thing, and we'll say this a couple times right before we get started. Even if you utilize this electronic version and you complete it online, you're still required to print out a hard copy for a signature by the employee and by the employer representative. So they have not adopted, I guess, electronic signatures yet for this. I rather doubt that they will. So please don't forget that. Merely because you use this form, you still, when it's all said and done and all the fields are completed, you have to print that out, have the employee sign it, and you sign it, or the representative sign it with the firm, okay? So let's take a look at the form. And there we go. Just want to make sure I got that straight. One of the things I want you to notice right off the bat, now obviously this is the electronic or the fillable form. And one of the very first things you're going to notice that's really slick is that it's got this button right up here in the upper left called instructions. And every time you put your cursor and the little hand over one of the button or anything on this form, it's going to give you an explanation of what that is, what that field is. So I'm just going to click on this real quick, and it takes you right to the instructions. Now, interestingly, these instructions for this 2-page form are 15 pages long, so they are quite complex, but on the upside, they really do tell you, I would say every question potentially you would have would be answered in these 15 pages of forms. So I just wanted to show you that. We're going to get rid of that. And they put that, maybe we'll get rid of that. They put that on the top of every page. Well, let's just go over here. There we go. I don't know what's happening. Oh, I see. Never mind. I think I have to get rid of it here. There we go. Well, forgive me, guys. I'm having a little trouble here. I'm just bring up my form again. There we go. So it's a learning process, and I'm right along with you guys on this. So be aware of that. You have a question on any one of these numbers, they're going to answer it probably within the field. But for the purposes of seeing the instructions, you can click on that button. And obviously, you can print them out. By the way, you are to provide the instructions to the employee, by the way, as well as the list of various documents they can provide. So we're just going to walk through this for a minute, and some of this stuff is very simple. And I'm going to enter in a lot of these screens because in order to go through the process, you'll see why we want to do that. Also, the tab feature, don't type something and hit tab. It won't tab over to the next one. It just, for whatever reason, they haven't done it that way. Forgive my spelling. Now, the other thing I want you to point out, or I want to point out to you too, and we'll get to that, if you don't fill out a field and choose not to, myself personally, I've never used any other names. So you have to enter not applicable in every field. If you don't do that, it will give you an error. But that's the beauty of the form. It will tell you when you're done about the errors, excuse me, that you make. So we're just going to do that. No apartment number, so guess what? We got to put NA in there, right? Get my papers together here. And you can do the pull down, or you can type in Iowa, the abbreviation for Iowa, whichever you prefer. Now, when we get down, whoops, I'm sorry. It would tell me I was wrong there, I'm sure. Well, what happened? Well, never mind. Maybe we have to use the pull down. Bear with me. I certainly typed it in before. Okay, come on. It goes really fast, so you got to be slow, and I'm not slow. See what I mean? We'll get it going. There we go. Now, date of birth, yes, you do have to put in there. I guess I'm just going to have to come clean and tell you all when I was born. Guess I could have taken off 10 years. Well, see, I'm having all kinds of trouble here. Okay, there we go. There we go. Now, these fields are optional, believe it or not. So the Social Security field is optional. Now, let's do this. Let's touch on here. U.S. Social Security number. Now, you know, I can't type. It won't take anything in there. Well, I wonder why that is. We can click on here, and it says it's voluntary on the form unless your employer participates in EVerify. And if your employer does, and you're the employers, of course, you'll let your hirees know that, and then they'd have to put their social in there. But this is one field where you don't need the NA. Now, the email address, my email address, is optional, so I'm going to leave that out. My telephone number is optional. And may I just say, too, you may like that, but don't tell the employee that they have to put their phone number in there or their email address, because once the government says it's optional on a government form, it's optional. And even though you may have policy, and you're going to have that information anyway, but that's one mistake I just wanted to share with you. Don't ask for more information than what the form requires, because should ICE come, or I'm sorry, USIS come and review you, which they do, they're going to cite you for a violation, and there can be penalties. So now this is what the employee fills out, Section 1. So they're going to check one of these boxes. And again, the beauty is we all know what a citizen is. We don't really care about that. Well, if you wonder what a non-citizen national of the United States is, you click on the question mark, and it will tell you what that is. So odds are you're not going to run into a lot of folks from American Samoa or the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. I've seen a few in my career, but not very many. So odds are they're going to be a citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or an alien authorized to work. So for the sake of our practice here, let's just assume that I'm a lawful citizen, okay? Now, one of the things it's going to require is this number here. Well, if they don't know what you're talking about when you say I need your alien registration number, again, you can go right there and it will tell you. That is a number that's on the green card, okay? So it's quite simple. So we're just going to say it's going to be an alien number. And notice it populated the A, usually a 6-digit number or a 7-digit number. So we're just going to put that in there. Notice how it filled in all these fields that we don't need to fill in now. We checked everything we need to fill. The NAs just populate by themselves. That's just awesome. Just awesome. So now the employee has filled out this section. They're going to sign it, of course, by hand, right? Remember, because they got to do that. So you won't be able to enter anything in here, and I don't believe you can enter anything in the date. That's to be hand entered as well when you're done, okay? So we move down to the next one. Depending on whether this employee used a translator or not, you will check this box. We're not going to fill all this out. It's pretty straightforward. But you simply check the box. I did not use the preparer. It takes care of it for you. It'll NA this out. But if they did use a preparer, they check this box. And this would be to help with language generally. And this handy-dandy form not only says, did you use a preparer or a translator, how many did you need? Now, again, in my experience, it wasn't uncommon to see a translator or preparer. I've never seen anybody use more than one. But if you did, you'd put this in here, and then all this field would have to be filled out, okay? But we're going to zero that out because we don't care. That's just more extra stuff. I don't know how to get rid of that. Let's see. Delete. Oh, yeah, there we go. Thank you. So we uncheck this. We're going to say that no. Yeah. Let's do this. This will probably, there we go. So now we're done. And here's the other thing with step 1, with page 1, with step 1. So if you do click to finish, this form will check to ensure that you've completed it correctly, which is fabulous. I'd rather have the computer tell me than have Eustace come 3 years from now and say, Mike, you didn't do this right, and you owe us, $800 of penalties. Okay, please enter your zip code. Okay, apparently I missed that. So you got to go back, and then it highlights the area that you forgot or did wrong. I'll tell you the truth, it's very difficult to make a mistake on this form if you read the directions and just follow it. So now we've got page 1 handled, okay? And that's the part that the employee is going to fill out. Whether you have a computer screen at work they can fill this out on, however you want to do it. But that's step 1, and they now have it down. So now, of course, is the part where they give you, they show you their documents. And of course, if you know your I-9s, you know that the employer or the employee can produce something from list A, and all they need to do is produce a single document. If they don't have that document, typically that's a passport for a U.S. citizen, then you've got to go to the second part, which the vast majority of people do. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to click here, and these are the titles of potential documents that meet Part A, which is a requirement for just a single document, okay? So you've got all those things. I'm not going to read them all. But we're not going to use that, so we have to put NA there, right? Don't forget. And again, see, there's lots and lots of guidance here. In our short period of time, we don't have time to read all of it. But the beauty is it just guides you right through it, okay? So list B, these are our density documents, excuse me. And you can do one of two things. You can click over here like we did before and get the drop-down list, or you can click here, and here's another great feature, I think. And it gives you a little discussion of what List B documents are and what different types, and it gives you all this information. But if you click on the blue link, it takes you to their website, to the USIS website, and here are examples of these B list documents with pictures. So it's great. I mean, we all know what a driver's license looks like, but when we get into some of these other documents, you may not know. So here, the guidance is just fabulous to tell you how that works. Okay. So and for this one, it's pretty basic. And here's some of the other documents in the absence of a driver's license that people can use. Okay. So we're just going to go back to our, let's see if we can get rid of this now and see. We couldn't get rid of it before. Yes. But we got to come back up with this one. Do we? There we go. Okay, so much for List B. So let's just go, why don't we just go, you'll pick it off of here with our driver's license, because that's what most people are going to have, green card or not. Issuing authority, we know that's the state of Iowa, right? So we got to do this fun thing again. Ooh, geez. That's going to be a recommendation. Slow it down, people. I mean, if you just hold it for a split second, maybe. There we go. Well, that's okay. We're going with it. And then we enter our document number in here, you know. Expiration date, and of course you have to put that in there. So we're going to say 10/13/2020. Okay. I did that again. I'll just make a mistake if I don't fix that. Okay. There we go. Then, of course, those of you familiar with I-9s know again, of course, that if I am on the other side of this gray line here, I've got to have two documents. One document works over here, two works over here. So employment authorization. We've proven up the identity of this new employee, this Mike Staebell. Now we've got to show that he is okay to work. So, okay. We just still got a problem there. There we go. That's good. Okay. So now we've got to pick from here. It will require us to do so. So the document title for List C most of the time is going to be, and we already ran through this, so it's just the same thing again. It gives you all this guidance. You can go to that whole list of documents. 99 times out of 100, whether they're a citizen or green card holder or whatever, they're going to have a Social Security card. But here are some other documents that you can use for that, okay? And if you need to know what they are, they're right here. So, but we're going to go with, forgive me, hard time with this cursor. There we go. Social Security card. And they do make the comment unrestricted. There are Social Security cards out there that say restricted for, not for use for employment purposes. So you don't want to use one of those. That'll get you in trouble. We know it's Social Security Administration. We know how that works. Try not to do that right. And then we're good to go on that. So now we've completed this list of this area right here, and we're good to go. So we slide down. Now, they've added, this is a new thing. And what they've added is this box right here that says additional information. Well, you say, what the heck is additional information? What it is just stuff that back in the previous forms you had to either annotate on the side or include an extra piece of paper or something. And a lot of this is very technical stuff if they're here on a certain type of visa. But I do want to point out that there's some very helpful stuff. And, oh, shoot. And the one is retention dates, form information. Here we go. If this employee terminates, you should put in that space the date that employee left and then the date when you can toss that I-9. Because remember this, I-9s have to be kept for a minimum of 3 years. Okay? So if you hired somebody and they were let go in a month, you still have to keep that I-9 for 3 years. Or 1 year after they're terminated. So if I worked for you for 5 years and then I quit, you'd have to keep that form for 1 more year. So it's whatever is, it's always a minimum of 3 years they have to be saved. And you want to make sure you remember that. And this is just a handy way to do it. Periodically you go through your I-9 forms and check those dates. And there's all other kinds of things, and they do tell you you can put any other comment or notation necessary for your business processes. So, and again, this is a field you don't need to put NA in, it is blank, all right? So, there we go. Now, we come down here, and this is where the employer signs. And keep in mind, the employer meets with the employee and reviews these documents that we just entered in and has to see them, has to look at them. And they have to look, the employer must look at the original document. You may not accept a photocopy of basically anything from an employee except a certified copy of their birth certificate. If you've ever had to go to the state, I've had to do this, they will provide you, they don't give you your original birth certificate when you go to the state Bureau of Records. They will give you a certified copy. Everything else you look at has to be the original. Now, while I'm on this subject too, let me talk a little bit about photocopying. If you are an EVerify employer, there are certain documents they require you to photocopy, all right? They don't require you to photocopy everything. If you're not an EVerify employer, you don't have to keep copies for yourself of anything. But for heaven's sakes, common mistake, people get in big trouble. If you choose, not because you're EVerify, but because you elect to ask for photocopies, ask for photocopies for everyone, all right? Not just the people you're suspicious about, not just the people that have surnames that are not, Anglo-American surnames, if they're Italian or Russian or Hispanic or whatever. Because honestly, I know personally employers who made that mistake, and they put they made photocopies of the documents for their Hispanic surname folks, but not for anyone else. USIS came and they got dinged for that because that's a discriminatory practice. So you photocopy everything for everybody or nothing for anyone, okay? Other than the EVerify people, and you follow those rules. So I'm not going to waste our time going through this, but this is where the employer would sign, date, etc., and that's all very basic stuff, name, etc., etc. So I'm not going to waste our time there since I'm a poor typist. Now I could click the finish here, but it's going to show this is a mistake, so you get my drift when I showed you that. Okay, we just about got this wrapped, and we'll have time for some questions. Now, reverification. I used to deal with employers that completely forgot about this, so for heaven's sakes, do not forget about reverification. When does reverification come into play? One of two ways. It's either somebody you've rehired, okay, or someone who's had one of their documents expire, all right? So let me go back up here and talk to you about expired documents for just a second, if I may. I want you to see the list, okay? The rules say, it says it in the instructions, list B here, you don't need to worry about the expired driver. You don't need to redo the form when the driver's license expires. B list documents don't need to be re-verified. If the employee brought you something here that had an expiration date, once that expiration date's over, you've got to re-verify by having them bring in their new form, okay? And that's also true in C. Now, we all know our Social Security cards don't expire, but some of the other documents in that pull down do. So that comes back to this, where you want to put that data in here so you can track it so you know. And that's what the most common thing that USIS sees when they do an audit is that the forms weren't re-verified. The other time you re-verify is if somebody leaves your employment. And if somebody leaves your employment and then comes back to work for you, okay, within 3 years, you don't have to go through this re-verification process. You haven't thrown away their I-9 yet, and you just pull the old one out. You just put in the rehire date, etc., and then you just go from there, okay? So, whoops, we're not to the right page yet. Re-verification, I'm sorry. So it'll ask you for the rehire date, date of rehire if applicable, etc., etc., okay? And then you fill this out. Now, if you rehire somebody who worked for you 5 years ago, or 6 years ago, more than 3, you got to start all over again. You got to start all over again. And the last thing I'm going to mention on this is this. somebody got their hand up for a question? Oh, good. There's some questions on there. Okay. The last thing I just want to mention too is if I need to re-verify because one of my documents has expired, and there's a new form come out, a new I-9 form, then you got to start over with a new form. Okay. So because the new form came around on Sunday, the 22nd, anybody that you need to re-verify now, going forward for a while, you're going to have to start over with a new I-9 form, okay? Normally that wouldn't be the case, but now you would have to, okay? So again, we kind of run through here quickly. That's about it. But these are the things that you really need to be aware of. And I think you can see how helpful it would be, even if you have the form filled out on paper and did the whole thing on paper, to have this on your desktop so you could reference it for the information would be extremely helpful, your HR people. So let's take a look at some of our questions here and see what we got. So we got 35 questions. Woo, okay. All right. Okay. Just do you see that? No. Bonnie, you don't. Okay, so I'm going to read the question. And the person says, we just have about 4 or 5 questions. In section 1, while attesting to citizenship or immigration status, if you selected boxes 1 to 3, do you have to write NA in all the blanks in number 4, alien authorized to work? Well, let's look at that and see. I think I can just get rid of this and go back up there. Let's see. We'll back up on number 1. There we go. So yes. These self-populated though, okay? Once I click this box right here, then the form itself self-populated all these boxes. So you have to make sure that there are NAs there, but the form takes care of it for you, okay? So that's that question. Let's look at the next one. Where are the questions? No, this one. Hit the arrow. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. I got to bring it back out. There we go. Well, where's my, hang on. Bear with me a sec. You know, we're trying to bring up our question box. Bear with me a second. What about, oh, there you go. Well, that's just to allow us to chat. I'm sorry, bear with me a second. What about that little star at the bottom of our screen there? Maybe it just minimized, you think? No, that's not it. Well, how about that? Oh, boy. Bear with us. I should have read all the questions out loud. Why don't we arrow down? Maybe it's still down at the bottom. Yeah, those dots underneath. Right there. Yeah. Well, excuse me. Hold on. Yeah, type in a question here. Let me see that for a second. We're working on this. Sorry, guys. I just wanted to see if that was down at the bottom. No, it's not. Click this out. No, wait for the question mark. Oh, there we go. Now we should get them all. Way to go. There we go. We won't go back to the form now. Okay, so that's question number 1. You said the instructions are to be given to the new employee. Why is this? We currently give our new employees a list of the documents, but not the instructions. Well, I printed out a copy of the instructions, and it basically said that they're to be provided to the employee. So the answer is it's because USIS says so. And when you read the instructions, you can tell that on section 1, they're directed straight to the employee. So have them available. I mean, the employee doesn't have to look at them, but have them available. I'd say have them printed out if you're utilizing that. Or, you know, if the employee is using the fillable form, you just tell them that they can click on that instructions key and have it. So in that case, you wouldn't even have to provide it because it's there at their leisure. Okay? So let's go down to the next question. Thank you. I'd forgotten to answer this. The question is this. I understood years ago that as an employer I was not allowed to ask for a specific document. Is that true? That is absolutely true. And that is something that ICE, and I keep saying ICE, USIS will crack down on. And I've read just this week in my research employer who got dinged, meaning fined, because USIS came in and there were too many forms that were one type of document, and they believed that the employer had suggested or told the employee. You just tell the employer, here's the forms or the documents you may provide. Which one you provide is up to you. and answer their questions, but do not get into that even close to suggesting what type of a document. Because again, USIS looks at that as potentially a discriminatory. Okay, do you have to re-verify an expired passport if they're employed for over 3 years? The answer to that is if that person's a citizen, no, you do not. Because, you know, a citizen's a citizen. But if they're not a citizen, if they had a passport, you know, because there's other passports they can use. So the answer would be is yes to that if the employee is like a green card holder or someone here authorized to work. But a citizen, you would not have to re-verify, okay? That's okay. So there you go. For that same question again. Yeah, that was on there twice. Who is considered to be an EVerify employer? That's the next question. You can go, just Google EVerify, and anyone who wants to sign up for EVerify may sign up. And the last numbers I saw, again, last week, were somewhere around 600,000 employers in the U.S. belong to EVerify. And what that is you get the same exact information here. It's cleared with this website, this EVerify website. Most of it comes from a Social Security number, and that they just about have to have. And then within a minute, not even a minute, you get a response when you enter this data onto their website that says everything matches, you're good to go, that employee is who they say they are and they're authorized to work. Or if there's a question, then they'll say, no, it's a non-match. Then you have to go to the employee if it doesn't match and say, hey, you know, Bill, your stuff didn't match up. Would you like to provide me with a different document? Now, just between us on the phone, I find that kind of amazing. I'm a little leery of asking for another document when the first one didn't clear the system, but that's what the instructions say. So EVerify is an option to any employer. It's free. There are a few more hoops you have to jump through. Like we mentioned, certain forms that have to be photocopied, certain documents and things like that. But it's up to you. It's up to you, okay? Yeah, and they must be reading my mind. Okay, this next question, there's just two more and we're done. Can you provide a link to the I-9 fillable form? Absolutely, and that's coming up on our next screen here in a second, as soon as we're done. And then the last question is there harm in keeping our I-9s for longer than 3? Again, no, there's no problem if you got the storage space, but you better be consistent. In other words, don't save some for 9, 10 years after somebody's left and get rid of others, because I absolutely guarantee you, as a former federal investigator, that's going to raise a question. Well, why did you keep these and get rid of those? So if you want to keep them all for a long, long time, that's fine. But when you purge them and you get rid of them, just look at the dates and get rid of everything from 10 years ago. Don't pick and choose, okay? Because that's really a sore point with USIS, okay? So now we are going to pull up the last thing today, and I apologize for a little bit of the glitches that we had. This link right here will take you to the I-9 website, and we'll go there in 1 second, the last thing I do. But I also put my contact info. I'll leave it up there. You see my phone number, my email, and things like that. I think my email's on there, isn't it? It's not. Okay, well, I am M. Staebell, at dickinsonlaw.com. M. Staebell, just spell like that, at dickinsonlaw.com. Okay? And just to show you what you get when you click on this, and then we'll call it a day. Yep. There we go. So this is their page, and as you can see, you've got the fillable version of the I-9 form, you got the paper version, you've got these translator certifications. This is one of those scenarios where if they had multiple translators, you got to have a form for every single translator, the instructions, and the Spanish. Let me throw you one last thing, my last comment that I find amazing. It's kind of hilarious, really. They provide a Form I-9 in Spanish, but only can be used in Puerto Rico. So apparently they don't realize there's people who speak Spanish outside of Puerto Rico. But again, if you have people who don't have a command of English very well, but they're good in Spanish, I would have the form there. But the form you need to keep and preserve is the English form. Okay? Did we get another question? Okay, I'm going to keep going as long as there's questions. Someone was hired prior to the new I-9 form. The new employee presented an employment authorization card. It will expire November 2017. We need to do a new I-9 form the date that yes. The answer is yes. I'm going to read it out again. I wasn't clear. We hired someone prior to Sunday, so they have the previous form. Their employment authorization card expires in November 2017. When they re-verify that person in November, will you need to do a new I-9 form? And the answer is yes, because the form you have on file is the previous version. Okay. So then the last question is now, can we go back to the expired passport? I'm still a little confused. If the employee is an American citizen, they have a right to provide a passport so that they can only do the A document. And let's go back up here. If it's, yeah, no, we'll be okay. We'll get it back. I think I figured it out. So you know that if any employee provides list A, then you don't need to mess with B and C. That's true whether this person is a citizen, a green card holder, authorization to work, H employee, whatever. But if they're a citizen, we already automatically know that they're authorized, or counts as both. So if it expires, they're still a citizen, they still are qualified to work and we still know they are. So you don't need to re-verify if it's just the passports that expired for an American citizen. But for the other folks, you should re-verify the passport, okay? Hopefully that helps out. I'll click on that again and see if that answered the question, or if there's another question.
Yes, she said yes. That answered the question.
You used to be able to give an expired, but I don't see that listed on there anymore. Does the passport have to be current? Yes. Every document that they produce, or I should put it this way, any document that the employee produces has to be current. Okay? So there you go. And this is like, yes, that helps. The last thing I want to say, too, is don't forget that you have to have the employee fill out their portion of this on day one, without a fail, on day one. And then they have 3 work days to bring in, if they don't have their documents with them, if they didn't bring their driver's license or their passport or whatever the case may be. So do not, oh, you new one? Yep. And then another one came up too. If an individual's last name changes, is new I-9 required? Well, that would be the re-verification portion. Yeah, because there is actually a section there that says new name. So yeah, you should do that. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to put my contact info back up there. See right now? Oh, that's where I go. Here, let's do this. Can you guys see, though they can't see these, you can, on this additional information screen, I'm going to type in my email address too, because somehow it didn't make it to my, so I'll put this in here first. So there's my email address, okay? mstaebell@dickinsonlaw.com. And then I'll put up my other contact, phone, etc. is right there. And feel free, please, to email me, call me with any questions you may have. I would be more than happy to help you out if I can. Now, somebody's got a hand up, but I guess that's just something different. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry I went over a couple minutes over, but oh, wait, I'm sorry. We got one more question, it looks like. Okay. If the I-9 is completed prior to employment and not sure of the start date, can we print the I-9 form and add that later when we know? You have to have made a job offer. So you can't have completed an I-9 for a prospective candidate. It says it right in those 15 pages of instructions. However, if the job offer has been made and they're not going to start for a week or two, but they have their documents there, by all means, go ahead and complete it. But you wouldn't sign it, have the employee sign it, or you sign it or date it until that first day of employment. But there's no problem filling it out in advance. But for heaven's sakes, when you're interviewing and you have 5 or 6 applicants, do not require them to complete Section 1 of an I-9, because that's no go. That's no good. So, okay? Doesn't look like there's any more questions. If anybody's got any questions, you can give me a call or send me an email. We'll go from there. So everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.